Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mr. Podcast. Happy birthday to... This is the Arsenal Vision Post-Match Podcast. Happy birthday to us. It's our 7th birthday. We are 7. If you're wondering what the hell was that intro, you can go back and look through history. There's a famous video of John F. Kennedy having happy birthday sung to him by Marilyn Monroe, which is what I was aping there. I don't think I quite nailed it. But the point is, it is our birthday, and we get to celebrate by talking about a win and some really beautiful goals from players who are not yet 7 years old themselves, or at least remember their 7th birthday, which I clearly do not. So it is my delight, my pleasure to say hello to Tim. You can find him on Twitter at Stoberto and say happy 7th birthday, Tim.
Hello there. Thank you. I feel and look and indeed am quite a bit older than that, though.
Maybe podcast years are like dog years. So 7 to be 49. Do you feel a little bit like 49?
Yeah, closer.
Okay. We're somewhere between 7 and 49. We find Tim Stillman. And Clive, you can find him on Twitter, ClivePAFC. Happy birthday, Clive.
Hello, and happy birthday to you. Feels like a special day. I should go out for a drink.
Yeah, I have no doubt you shall. Do you feel closer to 7 or 49?
Oh, 49 would be nice.
Yeah. It is, by the way, also my father's birthday, his 80th birthday. So happy birthday, Dad. I love you very much. And a very special birthday for him. So podcast birthday, Dad's birthday, and a win. Gosh, it's all happening. It's all kicking off. And we're here to discuss it. I do want to let you know, busy week from a hashtag content standpoint, because we'll have stuff on the Patreon side, as we often do in the midweek, Tuesday, Wednesday. We will have a pre-match live stream for the United game, and it looks like we will have a live watch party for the United game using new technology from a really fun company that was founded by a guy who happens to be a patron. So what is this community if not people helping people, Arsenal fans helping Arsenal fans? So the only downside to that is the new technology being new. You will be able to watch the game and see us and hear us all at the same time, all in the same stream, but it's limited to 200 people. So we're going to figure out how to make that work without it feeling just like some random, crush of trying to get onto a stream and it crashes and it doesn't work. We'll figure something out. But as that grows, that could be something fun that we'll do more of. And then we'll have a post-match podcast on Friday. So a full week of hashtag content, a big week, an important week, and certainly a game that we always anticipate anxiously, but it's not time to discuss that yet. It's time to look back on the game that was, the weekend that was, and I think a good weekend for us, and hilariously for Spurs who don't even get to play football anymore. They're so bad at football that they just stopped letting them play it. It is about time, if you ask me. So, Tim, I think this is a game that is about Mikel Arteta in some ways and not about him at all in other ways. And I will explain my thesis there and then let you say something coherent that makes the podcast successful. I think everybody would have understood him choosing Tierney, him choosing Maitland-Niles, or an El Neni, a change from two players who maybe struggled under the pressure in the second half against Liverpool and made key errors that cost us the game, but who had otherwise been playing well and are otherwise important in the future. I think everyone would have understood when Saka comes off with an injury, Nicola Pepe slides right in, but no, it's a chance for Martinelli, and that faith is repaid. I think all the faith was repaid across the board with those decisions. So he sticks with his guns. He sticks with the players that he has had the faith in, and he's repaid for that. But the way I think it is not about Arteta, and we'll maybe get to this a little later, is that his job, and a lot of coaches have said this, is to deliver them to the final third, and their job is to solve the problem in the final third, and that's where the talent takes over. So a day for him to make decisions that I think are really brave and repaid, and a day for the players to solve the problems which they do. Let's start with the first one, Tim. I'm really happy with the decisions he made, and I don't mean that in hindsight. I think the message it sends to these new players that he will stand by them. I think on Mikel Arteta 2 seasons ago, goes back to Tierney, goes to an El Neni over a Sambi after what happened at Anfield. He didn't do that. How do you feel about those decisions specifically?
Yeah, very, very much so. I very much agree. So I tweeted about it before the game that I said, I wasn't necessarily expecting that. I wouldn't have wanted his head on a pike if he hadn't done that. But I was pleased with it because I could follow the logic because the decisions were obviously linked. And like you said, a lot of it was about, don't worry about Anfield, like it happens. And it doesn't, I won't judge you as a player if you make a mistake. And to be fair, something very similar happened right at the beginning of his reign. I remember being at a press conference, I think it was before we played Sheffield United at home in January 2020. And it was when Mustafi made a big error against Chelsea. It was when David Luiz was sent off for a professional foul. I know that doesn't narrow things down. But Mustafi badly underhit a back pass, and I think Hudson-Odoi went through on goal, and Luiz took him out. And I remember at that point, we all, myself included, were like, "Well, that's Mustafi done. This was his last chance. He's done for now. He's not coming back in." And he did, and he played the next few games. And I was at the press conference before we played Sheffield United about 10 days after that happened, and someone asked him about that. And he said, for me, it's not about players making errors. It's about the response to errors. That's what I'm interested in. He said, players will make mistakes. But what I liked in Mustafi was after he made that mistake, he carried on playing. He carried on being brave. He carried on doing the things that I'd asked him to do. And that, I think, is something that's very important to Arteta, is to not chastise so much for errors, but really to reward the response to that. And he even referenced it in the scouting of Aaron Ramsdale. He said something about one thing that him and the kind of scouting team looked at very closely was, what does this guy do 5 minutes after he misplaces a pass or concedes a goal or even makes a big mistake? What's his behaviour? And he said that he was massively impressed by Ramsdale because he just carried on doing, some of those kind of high risk actions that are really rewarding as well. So I think we know those things are important to Arteta. I'm curious as to whether he was, maybe this time last week in the wake of the Liverpool game, maybe he was thinking, I could go back to Tierney and I could play Maitland-Niles or Elneny. But I'm sure he looked closely at the reaction in training as well. I'm sure he put a lot of stock in that, and that's another, I guess, a plus side of having a week between games at the moment. He gets a good chance to assess this. He got 4 or 5 good training sessions of those players in, and I'm sure he assessed them there. But I kind of agree that this was a medium-term decision as much as a short-term decision. I think we still would have beaten Newcastle if we played Tierney at left-back and Maitland-Niles in midfield. So I don't think... it did have a bearing on the result, because they both played really well, those players, and Tavares sets up the first goal in particular. But I think it was about the kind of the medium-term thinking, just like putting Martinelli on for Pepe. That was about... more medium to long-term thinking and about more than the game in front of him. And I agree. I was really, really pleased with it. And I know we'll come on to this later about what maybe happened in the last 20 minutes of the game. So I won't go into that now. But there are some things Arteta's doing and saying that are causing me to revisit some of my assumptions about him. And I'll give you another example after the Palace game. One of my frustrations was, God, why did we stop playing when we went 1-0 up? And then he came out in his press conference afterwards and said, I really didn't like that. I didn't like that we stopped playing. We need to keep going. We need to keep these teams under pressure. And so I kind of rethought it and thought, okay, this tendency to sit back, it's more on the players at the moment than Arteta. And I know you said this in the instant reaction pod as well. I do think there's a distinction this season. And I'm not saying Arteta hasn't learned, because I think he has, but also these are his young players. These are young players that he bought. So if the choice was maybe for if Joe Willock makes a mistake at Anfield last season, he probably doesn't come back in because he's not quite Arteta's guy, whereas Lokonga is, Tavares is. And I think one thing that's been really obvious since the close of the transfer window is Arteta has drawn a very distinct line in the sand between who the future of this team is and who it isn't, and rightly so, in my opinion.
Yeah, you can understand why a coach gives a longer leash to and has more patience with players he chose, players he brought in, players he sees as the future of his project. And I'm not saying that Arteta doesn't like Kieran Tierney, far from it. But Nuno Tavares is a guy he agreed to bring in, wanted to bring in, I would presume, and has been eager to play and eager to stick with. And I'll go further. You said, I'm not saying we wouldn't have won if we played Tierney and Maitland-Niles, maybe we would have won even more heavily. But the important point is, for young players who made mistakes in a big spot to be trusted again to come in to the Emirates and play really well in a win, it makes such a difference. It is such a big thing for their career and their progression, I think, that he did that. And so I'm so glad he did. Clive, you and I had a chance to have I think it's fair to say, inebriated discussion about this game on the Instant Reaction that I recommend everybody listen to. By the way, would you say it's fair that over the past 7 years, we've had some heated debates that have elicited some angry response?
Who, me and you?
No, I mean, just the podcast in general.
Oh, yeah, podcast in general. It's heated for us. We're not massively heated, are we? So, yeah.
But I would say that the most angry, heated response I've ever received to any debate we've ever had on the podcast is when I referred to the things that bob up and down in the water that boats go past as a buoy and was told by Paul that it's actually pronounced boy. And this has resulted in just an outrageous level of vitriol and anger and debate. And it is really just a ethnocentricity issue, I think, because let's face it, Americans speak differently. Now, some would say worse, and some would say not worse, but it is different. And I do want to say, you probably pronounce it boy, right?
Yep.
We can live together. Now, the point has been made to me that the word buoyancy is where that word boy comes from. Problem is, if I said boy to someone here, they would assume I was talking about a small male human. But buoy is what we call it here. It's what it's called here. There are movies in America that you can watch where they say this word. I'm not making this up. So you can go to Google, and it's funny, it gives you the option to pronounce it in British English or American English, if American English is such a thing. Some people say it's not a thing. It is a thing. It's buoy. So please reserve your anger, your vitriol. We have bigger fish to fry. But if we ever go boating together and I say, look out, we're going to hit that buoy, don't stop and turn around and say, you mean boy? Just drive around the buoy, for goodness sake. All right, Clive, I'm glad I got that off my chest. The selection is great, but I want to talk more about the attacking style. I think the criticism of Arteta that predominated the discourse early on was a conservatism. And he has shown now, I think against Watford a bit, and definitely against Newcastle, that when teams don't want the ball, he's willing to play without a net. Tomiyasu's average position in this game, very different than what we've seen in the past. Both fullbacks pushed up. And you have a theory on why we're able to do this, but this is something we would not have done earlier in Arteta's reign. But this game, 65, 66% possession, a lot of territory, a lot of defensive actions in the attacking third. We pushed them back and we kept them back in part because we were willing to play without a net. So what do you think has changed that allowed us to do this in this game that maybe is a reason we didn't do it in the past?
There's lots of things going on here. And I think when we're analysing football, there's the top three games versus you know who. And there's the rest. And I think this is one of the rest games. And I think what's developing, and again, throughout the season, I think balances will change, players' roles will change, and there's a constant search for balance, partnerships, relationships, and really looking at a player and understanding what their primary skill set is and how can I make them feel comfortable. This is a constant evolution, right? So, and players then develop on you positionally, they develop on you body-wise. What they like to do is they become more comfortable, and you always got to look at that and see, right? So in this game, it doesn't take long to realise. It's really, funny enough, I missed the podcast last week, and whenever I miss a podcast, you lot get stuck into Thomas Partey, and I think, yeah, you're lucky I wasn't on. Do you know what I mean? But then I started to look at it more deeply and think, okay, what's going on here? And in this game particularly, with our centre-backs being so quick and sharp, Thomas Partey in front of them, almost like a triangle, everyone else can go. So Tomiyasu's no longer in a 3-2-5. He's one line up. Nuno's everywhere on that left-hand side because he's so energetic. So that side's taken care of. So those two almost cradle the team, right? Much like wing-backs do with a back three, shall you say. And then Sambi's now the all-action midfielder with Odegaard sharing a little bit of that role and Smith-Rowe sharing pieces. And suddenly we got people in those lanes up the pitch. And territory-wise, because our centre-back was so comfortable in possession, because whether they want to carry it or slowly build up, draw people onto them, pass it, drop off, receive it back, pull you forward, switch. You know what I mean? we've got such. I'm so impressed with our back five. I keep saying it, but I'm so impressed with them because they can move the ball. They can move the ball with both feet. They can drive. They can drop off. They can receive. They can play high. They can do low blocks if they want to. They're tall. They're athletic. They're technical. I love it. Right? And then even the goalkeeper's got good feet. Right. So we got so many options in phase one of our build-up. So Thomas Partey now is playing a boring role in front of the back two, sitting there. And we should maybe, rather than be judging him on vertical passes and final entry carries, we should be judging him maybe on loose ball duels because that's where he is, right? Second ball player, get it, recycle it, regain, retain, move it on to the other players. That's not what we bought him for. But Granit Xhaka not in the team, potentially that's what's happening there. So back to your idea of football, Elliot. I know you love to see both fullbacks moving up the pitch and then getting to the byline, for example. It's massively important that we have that cradle, whether it be Tierney and Saka doing it, cradling the team, or whether it be our fullbacks cradling the team, allowing our most dangerous players to come inside. It's fine, really, but that's giving you your territory that you love, your zone 14 pressures that you like. It's giving you all that lovely Arsene Wenger football that you grew up with, right? And so you're probably thinking, this is a great game for me. This is brilliant. But I think it's a development for us, and maybe some of the players that we have bought have allowed us to do this now. And maybe our eyes need to look at the game and the roles in the game. And then we look at the players and how they perform in that role that's prescribed for them on that day.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting? I think one of the things that I feel held us back under Arteta early on was that the system shifted. And there was the back three phase that we went through. There was a 4-2-3-1, a 4-3-3. There was Xhaka dropping in the left back. There were all these little iterations of it. And I didn't know what he wanted to do and what he wanted to stick with. And this season, since the transfer window closed, I think we have a pretty clear plan, and everything is just little variations on that. And as a result, to me, Tim, the players look a lot more comfortable knowing where they need to be, where each other's going to be. And then what that allows, there was this criticism levied at Arteta, and I've levied it, I believe, at some point, that it's a bit too robotic. But now that the system is clear and the players seem comfortable in it, he's picking, I don't want to say the exact same 11, but a pretty consistent 11, that he's able to allow little variations. So we're seeing things like we saw for the first goal where Saka can switch and pop up on the left. And Saka's now combining with Smith Rowe and Tavares instead of being stuck out on the right, which tends to be more of an isolated position because Tomiyasu won't overlap as much, and go to the left where he can have a little more variation. And we see the beautiful first goal come from that. So do you think that now that we have found a system that seems to have stuck a bit and a fairly consistent 11, I realize Odegaard came back in for Lacazette, but otherwise unchanged, has meant that we're starting to see a little of that freedom, a little of that self-expression because the players understand their roles? I mean, do you think that step one is now done and we're getting to that step two?
100%, yeah. And this is one of the kind of key markers you'd have been looking for after the transfer window, right? Where all that kind of confusion that we had, at least after, before this season, that once you buy 6 players in and you're starting pretty much all of them, then we expect to see something that with a bit more clarity. And I think that's exactly what we've got. And I was thinking earlier as well about, just thinking about, I guess, challenging some of my assumptions about Arteta, what he wants, Arteta ball, etc. One of the things we don't really complain about anymore is that slow build-up. And a lot of that is, exactly what Clive was describing in terms of the defenders we've brought in, and Ben White and Gabriel's gotten much better at progressing the ball, and I guess having a player like Lokonga instead of Xhaka as well. Whether that improves your build up, that's open to debate, but I think it probably speeds it up just because they're slightly different types of player. And I guess also one of the things that, when you look at that Brentford game, what was really predictable about that Brentford game on the opening day, it was almost comical, the Xhaka to Tierney thing. And I'm not getting stuck into either player because I still probably regard them as first choice players and important players in this team who will who will come back in eventually. I don't think it was entirely their fault that day. I think there were a lot of pieces missing, but it was just so predictable, the Xhaka to Tierney thing. And there's kind of something else going on in terms of our build-up. So I do think that Ben White's really added to it. I do think that Gabriel's gotten a lot better. I think the fact that Tavares can drive inside and outside really opens up some angles for us. The fact that he can come in on that right foot, like he did for the goal, by the way, a lot of left-backs aren't standing in the inside forward position and then playing a reverse pass with their right foot. So things have varied up a bit. I still have an overall question about chance creation overall, about that last little bit. But I guess you start to get more trust that bit will be fixed, because we've kind of, I mean, maybe it's overstating it to say it's completely fixed, but, we're much better in the build-up now. We're no longer the team that takes an absolute age to move the ball from back to front. Like, we're getting it there quickly enough. And so I guess what happens in that last 20 yards of the pitch, that there's still, it's not terrible or anything, but there's still a question mark about volume there, I think. But definitely a lot of things have improved. And again, like, just look at, as much as the players that are playing, look at the players that aren't playing. Like Callum Chambers, what happened to him? He was starting every game from March to the end of the season. I'm not even sure he's on the bench anymore. Rob Holding does, and again, like, a lot of this is just because we're not in the Europa League, but there's a lot of players who just aren't playing at the moment, and that tells you who his guys are. And so I think it's reasonable to surmise that this is much closer to what Arteta wants. But what's the one area of the pitch where they aren't his guys yet that he's bought? Forwards. So Smith Rowe and Saka have come in through Hale End. I think you can definitely assume that they are his guys.
He plays them every game, so
exactly. But Lacazette, Pepe, Aubameyang, he didn't buy any of those guys, and because we spent so much money on them, we're waiting to bleed them out a little bit. We're waiting for them all to go so he can buy the attackers he wants. Now, there's a caveat there, because he still gave Aubameyang a contract, and that kind of makes him Aubameyang his guy as well. And I'm sure we'll have a discussion about whether he really is the guy in this team anymore. But I think we are getting much closer to what Arteta probably wants, and it is reassuring for me, because it's different to what we were seeing last year, and he's dropped the let's just whack 100 crosses in and let's take ages and we need at least 30 passes before we score a goal. And I mean, I know there were a lot of passes in the build up to the first goal, but it just seemed like, we made like a nice triangle, for example, on the left hand side in the build up to that. And you're right, yeah. There does seem to be better muscle memory as a result.
And look, I mean, there are going to be games that we win in transition like we did with Spurs. But I want to be clear about something. If you were bored by the first half of this game, that's okay. It was a little boring. But these are the games that you're going to win more often. The transition games where it's back and forth a little bit and you create two openings on the counter and they create a couple and you hope to edge it, that's going to go against you a lot. This game finished 2.9 to 0.2 on XG. That's what you want. 26 shots. It just reads Scott's by the numbers column, because it has everything you need in there. Basically, all the stats are our best or close to our best when it comes to shots, territory, possession, shot suppression. So yeah, John Joe Shelby gets a shot from 22 yards and Ramsdale makes an incredible save. Occasionally that happens. Unfortunately, I've seen Tottenham Hotspur, we know what we think of them, beat Manchester City on games where the full-time whistle blows and he goes, how on earth did that happen? Sometimes you get super unlucky. But dominating territory and taking all the shots and suppressing the opposition, even if it's a bit boring at times, eventually, because of the amount of concentration and work and effort that it takes to stay organized in those games, eventually, you are going to get your reward. And so we played a little bit without a net, but we did push them back and dominate and eventually create the openings. Obviously, Aubameyang misses a sitter, which isn't great. We scored 2 wonder goals. The team also, the more they get to play this way, the more they will get to figure out solutions. But Clive, if we are going to play this way more against the weaker teams, and there are few teams as weak as Newcastle, which is hilarious, but maybe not for long, then the center forward does become more of a question. You and I talked about this offline a bit, but if you look at the top 3 teams that we really feel have cut themselves adrift from the rest of the league, none of them really play with a big space run-in behind striker. Chelsea had one in Werner last season, and they decided it wasn't a fit and went and got a guy who can do, well, I mean, he can run in behind Lukaku, but he's a focal point. Liverpool play with drop-in focal point type strikers, and Manchester City don't even have a striker. They have, Bernardo Silva, a guy who will be more of a connector, more of a playmaker. And so we see these teams, what do they want to do? They want to get it to zone 14, then pop it out to the wings, then make the second man run. In fact, our biggest chance of the game, the Aubameyang miss, comes from a second man run from Smith Rowe, a really nice header, by the way. Smith Rowe, another second man run where he strikes the ball really cleanly, but doesn't get the goal. Like there is a feeling for me, and Tim alluded to it, that forward is the next position that has to be solved. And I think it's not just a quality and age thing we have to change, it's a style thing. So how do you think the striker component fits into chance creation, especially if we're going to start to dominate territory and possession in games like we did in this one?
Yeah, I think the striker component is massively important to build up. So I keep saying there's different types of games. So if you look at Liverpool game, it's a really interesting game to watch again. And I'm going to rewatch it again because none of us felt, apart from me as an idiot, that we'd win up there. Right? So why are we going to Liverpool thinking we're not going to win? And we know they're older and better than us, but the game is really interesting. They press us right into our box. So in two of our three top passing combination, Ramsdale was in them. So that tells you where our passing was, right in our box. But actually for Liverpool, in three of their top four passing combinations, Alisson was in them. So it's a different game. The pitch is massive. When they have it, we're pushing them back and we're pressing them. And we have it, they're pressing us right into our box. And so that phase 2 build-up, I call it, that ability to connect and set is really important against the very best teams. The very best teams. I was talking to Scott earlier, I was talking to you earlier, and I'm trying to work this out. When our phase 1 with our keeper and his great feet and distribution and our centre-backs, spot on. Our fullbacks are accelerators. One touch gone. Tomiyasu never more than 2 touches. It goes out of his feet. Bang. Into the next line, into Saka, where he turns around, escape artist, we're off. When it goes into that Odegaard, Lacazette spot, I'm not convinced we're setting the play and connecting the play with the most efficiency. And because of that, we're not getting phase 3 attack. We're then going to give us our big chance numbers, our creation numbers, our penalty box entry passes, and all those stats that you're reading for your head now, Elliot. We're not getting enough of them against the best sides. So against Newcastle, we do it because they're crap. Right, we can do it we can play it around. We can just leave it to the back 2, one in front.
We're going to look back on this conversation and laugh, Clive, in a couple of seasons when they're on 100 points in April.
When they're not crap, right? They bought everybody. and so we can put 2 defenders there, big space defenders, one in front. You can travel behind the fullbacks and loose ball collect and go again and just turn them around and take them. But against Liverpool, we couldn't get out on occasions. Against Brighton, we couldn't get out. And because of that, players are disappearing. So we're now questioning Odegaard because he hasn't got a setter around him, right? So Aubameyang's off somewhere on the left space trying to keep people back, but no one's convinced by him. So people are not double marking him anymore, which means somewhere else is getting overloaded. That's normally the Lacazette Odegaard space. We're smashing us there because they know once we come out of there and we escape out of Saka and we escape out of Smith Rowe, once we get out of there, we're a good side. So connect onto them quickly, smash them, get after them. Fabinho, Thiago showed us where we're good. Do you know what I mean? They got hold of us and stopped him. And everyone said, let's get Odegaard back in. So immediately our brains go to the last event. I call it event analysis. That's why people wanted Sambi dropped and wanted Nuno dropped, because it was the last bad pass they did was our memory. That's not analysis. We rewatched the game and we saw that Nuno was brilliant in that first half.
Man of the match in the first half. Yeah.
So analyze the game as an entirety, right? Not just the last pass, the last bad thing they did. Look at what's happening. And Tim alluded to perfectly the reaction to an error, which I guarantee you every one of these players will make one day. Do you know what I mean? It's your reaction to that and how you recover. And are you still brave? Do you still want it? Right. So I think for Arsenal as a whole, that setting of the play, that connection, when it gets to that middle part of the pitch, is the key to us opening up versus the best sides. And I don't think we have that centre forward player to do that yet. And whether it's a centre forward or whatever you want to call it, there's not enough security there against the very best teams. I'm talking, take it into a phone box and it comes out with you in possession. With bodies and elbows flying, and you've still got it, and we can go again. And they now have to react to the fact we've escaped the press, we've escaped the fact they've tried to pin us, and we're out there into spaces, and we're off and running with energy. And that's the future of us. That's the next phase to get to the Liverpool and the cities. That is the next phase. And I think it's in the transfer market, mate, if I'm honest with you. It's not quite here yet.
Yeah. There's going to have to be some replacement that still happens. There's going to have to be some changing of the guard. Even though there's a big changing of guard in the summer, I don't think anyone would say that project of changing the personnel is done yet. I want to get to the great performances because there are a couple that really deserve the credit, and I want to purr over the goals as well as a couple other bits and pieces. But if we're talking about great talent, which we are, then we can talk about another way that you might be looking at great talent. That's right. I can tell you one right now. You want an all-star team? We need one on the pitch. You need an all-star hiring partner. In this case, you need Indeed. Indeed is a hiring partner that gets you what you really want, a short list of quality candidates as fast as possible. Maybe we'll include them in our transfer content in January. Because you can do it all. Attract, interview, and hire all at Indeed. Don't struggle on your own to find quality candidates. Indeed can help you hire the right people right now. Indeed partners with you on every step of the hiring process so you can find talent with the skills you need through tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessment, and virtual interviews. With Instant Match, as soon as you sponsor a post, you get a short list of quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description, and you can even invite them to apply right away. I wonder if Arsenal has used this for, director of football or striker. Be curious. Something to think about. Get started right now with $75 sponsored job credit. A $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/vision. Get a $75, easy for me to say. Someone said I should talk slower, and while I've never really thought about it, it might not be a bad idea. Get a $75 credit at Indeed.com/vision. Indeed.com/vision. Offer is valid through December 31st. Could just say through the end of the year. Those are both the same thing, by the way. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right. Clive, is that enough of that?
Yeah, it's cool. That's a professional. Well done.
Yeah, but as professional as I'm going to do. Tim, let's talk good performances, great performances. I want to call one out that maybe wouldn't be the one first top of mind in a game like this where we pretty much dominate and create all the chances and stuff. But I think if we don't get to it, it would be a shame. And that's Benjamin White. I thought Benjamin White was good. And, the manager talked about needing to accelerate the play from the first phase, starting with the defenders. And when we did that, we got better. I think some people think, the first half was dull and the second half was good. I actually think those last 10 minutes or so of the first half, you started to see it coming. Mm-hmm. But Benjamin White was definitely the instigator from the back. So should we pay a little credit to him? Because I think it's a game where it'd be easy to overlook him, but that'd be a shame.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's really hit on something since that 2-2 draw at Palace, which felt a little bit like maybe too much to say a reckoning for this team, but maybe like a mini reckoning for the team, because I think there are quite a few players who've gone up half a level since then, and none more so than him. I think I think he's starting to, probably just one of those things where you start to feel more part of the team, but not just part of the team. I mean, because the thing is, for someone like Benjamin White, is ordinarily a signing like that would come into Arsenal and there'd be a load of senior players around you where you could not hide, but, where you could kind of have that first couple of months just to really fully get up to speed and acclimatise. And I was thinking back to when Sol Campbell first arrived. Not a lot of people will remember this. He had a tricky first few months, and I remember he made a big error in a game against Middlesbrough around about this stage of the season, and I just remember quite a few articles coming out going, "Oh, has he underwhelmed? Has he underwhelmed?" It was one of those things that it was in people's minds. Then he made a big mistake, and it was right, yep, he's definitely underwhelming. He's not doing it yet. And so sometimes it does just take a little while to feel your way into a team, particularly when you've made the big move, and you've gone to a bigger club where there's more spotlight than there would be at Brighton. But I think he's really come on. I really do. I think part of that is just him and Gabriel and Tomiyasu, for example, just playing together all the time with Ramsdale behind them. I think that continuity has been really valuable for all of them because they've all played really well in that period. I mean, there are still aspects of Tomiyasu's game I have a slight issue with, but overall can't really complain about his performances. But what has, I guess, surprised me about White was, I'd heard about his kind of passing range, and I do think we've seen that, but maybe not in the way that I expected. And I guess it's just because we had David Luiz in that spot for a couple of seasons that was the type of thing I was expecting, And you know what David Luiz was like? Basically, every time he got the ball, stride out, smash, big diagonal, pretty much every single time. And you don't get that with Ben White. I think there's a bit more variety. I think he's got that kind of fade up the line. And of course, it's him who finds Tomiyasu just before the Martinelli goal. But what I've really liked is the kind of the dribbling out as well, because that's I've said this many times before, but and more in relation to attacking players, but the impact of good dribbling cannot be underestimated in the modern game, where it's all so tightly choreographed, and anything that ruins a team structure, anything that makes the guy who's sitting on your number 6 and man marking him, makes him think, oh shit, I've got a decision to make here. Do I stay? Do I stick? Do I twist? Like those little mini decisions, they're so important, and he's starting to really force those. I think had a tough game at Anfield, but who didn't? But I think he's really come on, particularly since that Palace game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's easy to forget how young he is, especially by center back standards. So I think there's still a lot to come there. Really enjoyed that performance.
And he's one of the senior players in terms of age.
It's crazy, isn't it? Yeah. Well, all right, enough of this boring praising defenders. Let's get on to it, Clive. Bukayo Saka. I think there are a lot of people that have sort of looked at him, acknowledge he's great. He is great. Thought maybe, has he played a little too much football? Is he really at his best? Should Pepe get his place? You hear the little whispers, and then he just goes and drops a 10 out of 10 until he gets injured, of course, has to leave the pitch. Absolutely brilliant. Starts the game splitting 2 defenders and taking a shot early. And I think you saw the full gamut of what he can do in this game. And when you're facing a low block, you need those guys who can unlock the defense with a little moment of individual brilliance, but can also move well off the ball, who can also finish. That last bit, the finishing, I think there's been some questions, but that finish is top drawer from a great run. Nice piece of interchanging play, connected play between Tavares, Smith Rowe, and Saka after he's given the license to switch sides. I thought it was brilliant. So for me, Saka's probably the star man in this match, and I think it is great to see it. Maybe at a time when people are wondering if he'd just been a bit jaded. Do you think he was the standout player, and how great is it to see that from him?
Yeah, alongside, if you're looking at influence, alongside Ben White, I think Ben White is the technical leader of the team from the back end of the pitch. I think he literally is our playmaker, much like Van Dijk is a playmaker for Liverpool. I think he's that important. But when it goes forward, the guy that breaks the game open is Saka almost every time. He's the guy that jumps between 2 players, receives it, post up, turns around, when he should know right to turn around, keep it, get rid of it, gets it back, final third, here we go. When he's out on the outside, in between 2 players, here we go. Cross his left foot, some of them are accurate, some of them are not, but the intention is always good. He faces the play much better from the right, but when he goes left, he can still deal with it because he's grown up as a left-sider, as most lefties do. You end up when you're a young player, if you've got left foot, left wing, left back, that's where you start, simple as that, unless you're a centre-forward per se. So everyone every lefty can handle the ball on that side driving in. I've called him the next Clarence Seedorf, I've called him the next Raheem Sterling, I've called him lots of things. That tells you how good he could be, really. What could he be? I mean, seriously, we talked at the weekend, weren't we, Elliot, about, when Salah comes in on his left foot and he just takes a shot. Well, Salah's 29. And when he was 20, he was probably playing for Basel. And hardly anyone knew about it. I'm just guessing there, right? So
I'll check that because inevitably someone will come back
someone will tell us,
here's
right?
what he was doing.
But he was playing somewhere where we didn't know. I don't think he arrived at Chelsea when he was 20, and he obviously went to Rome and then he came to Liverpool. So I'm not sure where he was, but he wasn't playing in a European final at 20. That's for sure.
He was a buzz.
There you go. Oh, not a bad guess, was it? So, and
5
it just shows
goals, 4 assists, 4 goals, 3 assists. Yeah, not a good player. Move on.
Rubbish. We should move on from him. What's he going to be? What's he going to be? What's he going to be? Rubbish. And so, but we got his kid now doing what he's doing. He's basically our best player offensively and has been for a year. And this is it. I mean, I love projecting on players. I love getting excited about young players. But sometimes I get this sort of sharp intake of breath, because if he's doing this at this age and he's done it consistently now for over a year, he's in the England team more or less. This is unreal, isn't it? This is Cesc Fabregas stuff, isn't it? Really, that's the levels that we talk about when it comes to influence, And it's quite frightening. I'm starting to think about contracts already, and. We've got to get him nailed, because I just think he can go to the very, very, very top of the game, in my opinion. Nowhere else at the top.
I mean, he just turned 20. So like it is easy to forget, I mean, he's younger than Emil Smith-Rowe. Smith-Rowe came into the team later, but he's younger. And so trajectory-wise, the sky is definitely the limit. I don't want to shut you out of the Bukayo Saka conversation, Tim, but there's still a lot to get to here. So do you want to just quickly add on, how nice it is, I think, to see him do the stuff in the final third that we know he can, but maybe just hadn't quite been happening with regularity recently?
Yeah, totally. And he looked the player most likely in that period you're talking about, the kind of 10 minutes before half time and the 10 minutes afterwards. He was the one really taking that responsibility on. And you can tell what a good player he is, because no one really talks about his age anymore, because it already feels like he's been around so long, and it just doesn't feel like a factor. He's just good, and that's the end of it. And obviously great for him to get a goal as well. I think it was only his second of the season, and the numbers in terms of end product are not great across the front players at the moment. And so it'd be really good, for him particularly to add a little bit more of that. And we saw with the finish how capable he is.
Yeah. I mean, he just the confidence in the finish, and I also think, and we'll get to this when we get to the Martinelli part. Don't worry, we haven't forgotten that. I mean, Tim, his run is also really intelligent to stay on side, as is, like I said, Martinelli's. We'll get to that, but it's all of it. It's just good forward play, swapping sides, seeing where the opportunity is, exchanging passes, timing the run right, and then a confident first time finish.
Yeah, completely. You can just see the brain working while it's all unraveling. And like you said, just coming over from the right hand side. Like I'd like to think, particularly because he was on the right hand side, which during that period was the opposite side of the dugout. Like I'm going to guess he wasn't necessarily told in that moment, go there, go, like he wasn't micromanaged to do that. I'm pretty sure a discussion would have been had at half time about, feel free to go and drift when you feel it. But like Arteta didn't put him there. Do you know what I mean? He didn't didn't have the puppet strings on at that moment, and having like Smith-Rowe, Saka, Tavares together, 3 guys who I think are all pretty decisive in the final third. Tavares maybe too decisive sometimes, but 3 guys who are going to try and break the line, who aren't going to pass backwards unnecessarily. And you're right as well with Saka staying on side, because he's kind of out of the move for a little while, but he makes sure he's on side just in case, and then of course it opens up. And the way he took it on as well was because when the ball first arrives at him, I thought he was gonna square it, but he clearly makes a decision like, no, had enough of this one's going in. And sometimes you've got to do that, and sometimes like it really favours that. Sometimes you can over elaborate a little bit, and I think for your average 20-year-old player would have been looking to pass that on, but he wasn't.
Well, let's come on to a little bit more on the Aubameyang thing. And by the way, the one thing on Tavares shooting a lot that I'll say, normally I don't like long shots, pointless shots, keep playing, keep trying to find the opening. But I think when you have defenses pushed way back and pushed deep, that sometimes if you take the shot well, it nicks off a leg, it finds a corner, it rebounds to all the players in the box. So I don't mind shots from distance when you are camped on the edge of the final third, because it can sometimes break up that low block a little bit. But, some of the Tavares shots were a little wild. The Aubameyang thing. So there are two debates on the Aubameyang front. The one we've already sort of talked about with Clive, about style of center forward that we need going forward. But the other, he's only ever going to be who he is. The other debate is whether he's bad, whether he's good, this, that, or the other thing. Is he washed? Is he, is he dusted? All these things that you hear thrown around. And the funny thing is, it seems to focus on the missed sitter. But missing sitters is a part of Aubameyang's game and always has been. When he was winning golden boots, he was missing sitters and penalties. Unfortunately, he does that. It's just the volume of chances he gets has often been so high that it all balances out. When he gets fewer chances, and we as a team get fewer chances, you notice those misses. The one that jumps out at me more is the Emil Smith-Rowe through ball, which maybe is a touch heavy, but that electrifying, eye-catching burst over 2 or 3 yards from a few seasons ago, where he gets to that and chips it over the keeper and it's a goal. In this instance, he gets to it just a bit slower and isn't able to lift it over. I think his name's Dubravka. Is that right? The keeper's name? And it's a save. So in terms of the Aubameyang performance, Tim, and Clive, I can come back to you on this as well. But Tim, do you think the miss, while it's bad and it's frustrating, and in the moment I was like, oh, come on, screw off, because you want that breakthrough. Is it the second one, the not getting to the ball there, that's more eye-catching in terms of trying to evaluate where the player is?
Quite possibly, though I've got to admit I don't remember it. So
Smith-Rowe plays a really nice, delicate through ball, and Aubameyang runs onto it. He gets to it. He tries to lift it over the keeper, but he gets to it where the keeper had already closed down most of the space.
Yeah, quite possibly. I do think the thing is about Aubameyang, though, like, and I guess one of the issues with his fit at the moment in this team is he's not really a play on the shoulder striker either. Like, I think he really, really is just penalty box. Like, I don't think he makes those like stretching runs in behind fullbacks or anything like that. I really think he just he waits to sniff out a chance. So, I mean, obviously, like, that acceleration, it helps to a degree, and it helps in certain circumstances. And if he has lost it, then yeah, that's a couple of goals off his tally every year. But I really don't. The more I've watched him play for Arsenal, the less I've thought of him as a fast player. He clearly is fast, but like, even when he first joined, like, I rarely see it, and that's not necessarily a criticism. Like, I just don't think he really uses it that much. I just don't think he's that. I think he's much more in like the Aguero, Cavani category, if indeed it is a bit useful to categorize players without leaning too much into it. But like, I really think that like his pace is almost incidental a lot of the time, and I really like the chance that, like, the first chance he misses, like, that's Aubameyang, right? He's standing like a couple of yards from goal. He anticipates he doesn't score this time. We've seen that a million times. I'd love to, maybe I should look on YouTube and see if I can find his Arsenal goals back to back and just see how many of them at any point were a result of like pace or a burst. Like, I know there has to be a burst somewhere, because there's a lot of work a striker does before he gets the tap in from 6 yards, and some of it will be related to pace. But I'm not sure how much of a factor it is, because and I don't know, maybe that is worrying, because maybe that is a string he should have on his bow given his kind of physical gifts. But I just, at the moment, I don't see a drastically different Aubameyang. I really don't. Like, he's pressing a lot more. Actually, his pressing numbers are fairly consistent with what he's done every season, except for the half season under Arsene Wenger, where we didn't press, and last season, and there were probably at least some physical mitigation for that with malaria, etc. And also the impact of there being no crowds. I think there was less pressing overall in the Premier League last season, and probably partially as a result of that. But I'm just not seeing a massively different player here. What I'm seeing, and he does obviously have his responsibility in this, like, I'm just seeing a team that don't really create that much or don't get the ball in the final third, in the penalty area a lot. And I think what's possibly missing for him, because again, his numbers, I think he's got 3.4 non-penalty XG so far this season in the Premier League, and he's got 4 goals. Factor in the penalty misses, it's 5 XG, 4 goals. Even that is broadly similar to what he usually puts up. So there's not actually that much in the numbers that tells you that there's a lot different going on, except for what's going on around him. And I guess like the criticism of him would be that, and I think this will be a persistent one throughout his career, and probably why he never got the Real Madrid-Barcelona move. He's not like a force of nature in terms of he will not turn a game for you like single-handedly. You've got to get the ball in the area for him to be effective. Like if you're losing 1-0 and the other team has cut off his supply, that's it. Like he's not a factor in the game at that point. But I think one of the things he's possibly lost as well is that I think he's just a striker that thrives a little bit more on wide service, a little bit more on cutbacks. And actually, at the moment, we're playing like 2 inverted wingers in like Smith Rowe and Saka, who aren't really playing like wingers at all. On the right-hand side, Tomiyasu doesn't get forward quite as much, which is quite normal. And Tierney's now not playing on the left, and we've got Tavares, who, because he can drive inside, is doing more of the combination play, which is good, and that's good for the team overall. But I wonder if, like Aubameyang, it's better to have Tierney there, playing on the outside, getting the ball in the box a lot more, because I haven't looked up the numbers behind this, but I'm getting the impression that there are like fewer cutbacks. There's fewer of those. Like we've kind of gone a little bit more central. And again, I think that's largely good. I think we needed to do that, but we haven't got like Pepe whipping those crosses in, Tierney whipping crosses in. We haven't got like the combination to the byline type stuff going on at the moment. And I think that's the kind of service he really, really favours. And that's where his big chance comes from in this game, doesn't it? It comes from, it's a wide delivery at some point. I appreciate it's a rebound, but he's loitering on the back post.
Saka drives to the byline, clips a cross that Smith Rowe heads really nicely.
That's it.
Yep.
And where's he loitering on the back? Like that's his kind of area, kind of just loitering around in the background when a kind of cross comes in or a low centre comes in or something. And we're doing less of that. We're going a lot more centrally. And so I do just wonder whether there are some things that, this team's moving away from him a little bit. And I'd also say in his defence, like Lacazette just played 4 games in a row and didn't put up a goal or an assist. Saka's on 2 goals for the season. Ødegaard's on 1 goal and no assists for the season. Like there is something and I think we've discussed it already. There is something that's just missing in that final third, and he's probably at least partially responsible for that. But I do think he's probably partially a victim of it as well.
Look, I think this is what's really hard about data and stats and watching the game and analyzing how it all goes, because like he had, I think, 1.18 expected goals in this game. If he does that every game, he's the best striker in the world, right? Like that, nobody does that. So you say, oh, that's a good game. But there's other aspects to it. He had 27 touches. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is a low-touch player, period, especially as a striker. And so you say, if we're going to be a team that transitions, he can still be a dominant force for us. If we're going to be a team that parks on the edge of the area, you look at like a Bernardo Silva, or whoever it is that's playing nominally, up front for Manchester City, and they average like 70 touches a game. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is averaging his fewest touches a game since he's been at Arsenal, his fewest attacking third touches, and his fewest penalty box touches. He's a very low-touch player. And so you're basically saying, we're not going to get in his zone 14. We're not going to get that focal point on the edge of the box. We're not going to be able to play central to play out to the wing. We're not going to be able to use that space as effectively to pick apart defenses. And so it is a style issue. I don't necessarily have a problem with the player as who he is, so much as styles fitting certain games. And he is a big space player in my view. And, maybe a small space player, if you think you're going to have a lot of penalty box action and you can afford to carry one guy who just kind of floats around and finds space. But I don't know if we can afford to do that, Clive. So
Yeah.
I don't want to kill him and say he had a bad game, but I do want to say 27 touches when you have all of the ball in the attacking third. You're a very peripheral, easy for me to say, influence on that game. And that's always been who he is. He was a 31 touch player at Dortmund, but guess where all the touches were? In the box. That's it.
If you look at like just playing styles, right? And I think this is where it's at. So Aubameyang, if you want to put his playing style into one word, he's a finisher. That's what he is. In this team, we're missing the attacking central progressor, that attacking player that centrally holds it. You mentioned Bernardo Silva. That's what he is doing at the moment. He's playing in a centre forward role, but he's not a centre forward as we know it. Air quotes. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But he's an attacking central progressor. What is Smith Rowe and what is Saka? They're offensive wide progressors. So not wingers, but progressors from the in the half space, lane 4 into lane 3. And so we want Aubameyang just to finish. So by that, he's already cut off from the team. He's not part of the build-up. But what are we missing? We're missing a bit of build-up, aren't we? We're missing a little bit of build-up in those central areas. We're asking Odegaard to do it. He's not really that player. He's more of a playmaker from the central areas. He's not so much a central progressor. He's a playmaker. I have touches and I'll make the play for other people. So there's something missing there. I think it's a style thing. I think I was talking to Tim or you before the podcast, but I can see a situation quite quickly developing again where Lacazette plays to do that central progression and Aubameyang plays off the left. And if we're going to Old Trafford, we're going to need that stickability in the middle of the pitch, and then we can sprint down the sides. Once we get it out there. I mean, Liverpool, their 2 forwards, they don't play down the middle, right? They let other people do that, right? They let that people do that work, and they come in from the sides. And I think stylistically, the team is developing slightly away from him. Again, if you want to go against the best teams, we need more oomph in those central progressive areas. We need that. And that is not Aubameyang. Aubameyang is the last touch, exclamation point. Should have scored in this game. This is a game he should score in because we're in the box. We have touches. We have big chances. He should be scoring in this game. So this is like a bad day for him, regardless of whether.
Except my only pushback on that is that like he had 2 big chances, right? So he was there.
Just from when I say it's a bad day for him, just literally because he didn't score.
Right, yeah.
Everything else was absolutely fine. He always does this. We don't see him next minute the ball's in the back of the net and he's doing a front flip, right? And so we're all happy. We'll go off to the pub, right? So he didn't score. So now we're looking at him thinking, he didn't score. But that's what you do. You're the finisher. So he's literally judged by that metric, that scoring metric. We know he's not great on setting the play. We know some of his carries and passing decisions are not great. We know he's pretty low touch, but he can finish. And so if he's not finishing, we start to question his position in the team and his influence on the game. And that is just a striker's want. That is his lot, sorry. If I'm scoring, great. If I'm not scoring, what am I bringing to the show? So developing the team, I'm wondering what we're going to do going forward. Are we going to be like the midfielders team? Like a certain team in Manchester, with that type of setting players? Are we all thinking we need a centre forward to make us all feel comfortable? A big guy down the middle that can pin people and get onto the crosses we're going to put in? I'm generally not sure what the next phase of Arsenal is. I do think a taller, left-footed player in my head that can play in the middle and on the right would be useful. We've got one, quite expensive, but he's gone missing and he's a little bit loose in his ability to keep the ball in certain spaces. So, and I do think there's a potential of a right-footer striker that can set the play but also can play in the half space on the left. So let's see what happens or how we develop, but it's going to be interesting, man. But I think Aubameyang is just caught between styles and what we need. I think if we look at the Liverpool game, I think we realise the next phase of Arsenal versus the best may not include him.
Yeah. Tim, I think you need to go, but before you do, can I at least get you to say, wow, Martinelli's goal was great?
Yeah, it was. And a really interesting decision to bring him on as well, particularly because he doesn't usually play on the right. But And I do wonder, because as we look ahead to the Manchester United game, if Saka can't play, there's a decision to make there, and you'd think it's between Martinelli and Pepe. And obviously trusting a player with starting at Old Trafford and the last 25 minutes against Newcastle are different things. But if maybe food for thought to leave you with, but if he decides to go with Martinelli, that might smooth the passage to not playing Aubameyang at Old Trafford. I think you can justify having Lacazette up front more if Martinelli, if Martinelli's in that wide spot and he's the one making those runs into the box, like this one that he makes from a great pass from Tomiyasu. But that might be quite interesting, and I wonder if those decisions for Thursday will be paired. So if it is Aubameyang, then I think we'll probably start Pepe. But if he wants to start Martinelli, I think we might see Lacazette. But really great for Martinelli. I think he really needed that moment because he hasn't played a lot of football. He might not play a lot more for the next month or so. So I think he just really, I think everyone that likes and values Martinelli needed that moment, that kind of, because people's opinions like change so quickly, and it's quite interesting, like, ahead of this, like I'm sure both of you do listening to the Arscast Extra, but the interesting thing is the questions that come in, and a lot of the questions are like, will Tierney ever play again? Will Pepe ever play again? Like we and like none of us are immune from this. We turn so quickly based on the situation, and I'd already started to hear like is Martinelli as good as we think? Is he which I think is a fair question, but then it quickly turns to, is he any good at all? Is he actually rubbish? Was all of this just an illusion? Can he actually kick a football? It quickly like snowballs, and for him to come up with not just a goal but a really good goal like that, a really great finish, was just a great reminder that this kid's still there. He's still really good. Doesn't mean that he should be playing 90 minutes in every match yet, but we've got something there. And I think it was important for Arteta, because he made that call to bring Martinelli on, that it worked straight away. And again, that's another tick for Arteta, right? That's something we've all, to varying degrees, criticised him for, not changing games from the bench, not kind of changing things up to get that goal. Did it on this occasion, so fair fucks.
Yeah, and the problem, Tim, is that like you can't win as a manager, because whichever decision you make, the decision you don't make is going to be hyper-analyzed. We can't help it. Like it's, our brains are wired to do that. So if he brings on Pepe in that game and Martinelli doesn't play, it fuels the he hates Martinelli fire. But by bringing on Martinelli and not Pepe, it fuels the maybe Pepe's off in January, he really doesn't rate him fire. Now that may be true, but the point is he could only bring on one of them, and whichever one he didn't bring on, there would have been life breathed into why he didn't bring the other one on.
Yeah, and I guess I'd say also in closing, I quite liked Paul's point on the instant reaction that I hadn't thought of, which was we need Martinelli in January and Pepe's going to be away. So, again, probably a medium-term decision that was more about the game than the game that was just in front of us. Yeah.
Not to mention that Saka's coming off with injury, and if you're trying to figure out what am I going to do maybe as soon as Thursday at Old Trafford, you might as well get a look at the kid. You have to go though, right, Tim?
I do now, yes. Thank you very much. Right. My pleasure as always, etc., etc.
Tim's on Twitter at Stoberto. You have to say it again. No.
My pleasure as always.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Clive, before I get your thoughts on him picking Martinelli, let's just talk about the goal for a minute. NBC, who is the rights holder here in the United States, posted a video of it on Twitter, and it's got all the angles. And look, the finish is absolutely sumptuous. I think Tim from 7 a.m. Kickoff referenced Eduardo, and I think Eduardo's goal was his first one back from the long-term injury. I want to say it was against like a Burnley or something.
I think that's right.
And it was a volley outside of his boot, a little different, but still sort of a first-time sumptuous type finish. And the finish is going to get the headlines here, rightfully so, but the reverse angle of that NBC video shows you, and I love the way Paul put it, how he surfs the back line, how he doesn't just make the childish run darting straight in behind, but the bent run where he surfs the back line. And I realize their left back gives him plenty of room, and Tomiyasu's pass is quite good as well. Deserves credit for that. But I just think there's so much class in the run, obviously in the finish. So can we purr a little over the goal before we talk a little about the decision to bring him on and the player generally?
Yeah, obviously we all love the goal, but when you look at a player, I try to look at what they do really, really well. And I think Martinelli's real trick is arrival. His ability to arrive into an area and then deal with the ball in different ways and score in different ways, whether it be head, volleys, left foot, overheads, whatever. But his arrival to where the ball is in the area. And to be a good arriver, I don't think you can start centrally. Obviously, you can on certain days, but I think he's a wide forward that comes in from either side because he can see it, then he can arrive. And then his ability to finish off both feet, and it's just crazy, right? So I had him as my breakout player of the year, and I was feeling rather stupid as we're sitting in November. He's had about 1 minute in the Premier League, and I'm thinking, this isn't going to work out. And I was just, not say wavering, but just wondering, what's going on here a little bit. And I looked at pictures of him over the weekend, and he's really developing into a man. He's grown. He looks stronger. He talks the language really well now with a bit of a London tinge to his accent. He's just developing as a human being at our club. And people do it at different rates, Everyone's talking about Smith Rowe appearing recently since last Boxing Day. But he's a London boy, right? He's had lots of injuries. He went abroad. He went to Huddersfield. And he's arrived. Here we go, 21, bang, England team. The sort of the journey, the line, it's just different for people. Saka walks straight into the first team. Cheers, thanks a lot. I'm the man. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, I'll have your shirt, Pepe. Don't worry about it. Sit down. And I'm playing, and that's it, right? So everyone's different. And Martinelli, although we saw some great numbers at 18, 19, he's now 20, and we're wondering where we fooled. But I don't think we were fooled. I think we just got to trust the people in charge of the club that they're developing this player in the right way. And we just got to sit back. They know where he is. They know how much he's grown. They know what his injury situation is. They know what the data is. They know what they want to do. We just got to sit back and wait. And now, of course, the excitement index has gone up again because we've all been reminded of these crazy finishes. When you've got the goalkeeper rushing out to you, you look at nothing but the ball and you could get smashed. I mean, wow, that kid has got something special, hasn't he, really, to do that. And I just like the ones we've spoken about. How exciting is this, Elliot, really? Genuinely, how exciting is this, the potential of these young players? Is just crazy, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, you know what? You said something like we try to understand this player, analyze player. Can we also just admit, Clive, we don't know much about Gabriel Martinelli yet. He's young. He's played very little. He was really exciting, then got injured and was out. And I still don't think people appreciate that was a major injury and he lost a lot of time at a critical point of his development and came back into a sort of chaotic and tumultuous situation in Arsenal and didn't really have a place that he could come in and make his own and was probably handled with a little bit of kid gloves coming back from the injury. And then there's no Europa League, so there's only so many minutes. Like, we think he's a supreme talent, but we're still learning who this player is. The idea that any of us can have a definitive understanding of a player we've really seen so little and is at the absolute dawn of his career is silly, right? So maybe the best thing to say is he looks like an amazing talent and a natural goal scorer and penalty box threat, but we don't know much about him. I mean, Bukayo Saka has played more minutes this season, I think, than Martinelli has played in his Arsenal career,
Exactly. I remember the Brentford game? I barely remember it now because I tried to erase it from my memory, but there were also a couple of players that, we lost Lacazette.
Preseason game against Brentford, yeah.
we lost Lacazette and Aubameyang, I think, on the day of the game, and Balogun and Martinelli were thrown in. Remember that? Mm-hmm. And we sort of judged them both since then. They both didn't have great games. And you think, well, how prepared were they? Were they even training with the group? I think Martinelli just got back from the Olympics, barely did any training. In you go to the first game, Brentford's new ground being opened. And what do? We can only judge them what we see. So we judge them, didn't we? Balogun, is he quite ready? He needs a loan. Martinelli, is he as good as what we think he is? He's not being played. Does Arteta fancy him? We just go through these sums and add up. And I think it's important sometimes just to breathe, like I just did then, just to breathe and say, yeah, you know what? Next time I see him, let's have a look again. See what he looks like. See, once he sat down, see what he looks like. And yeah, he's now a player that we found. And in this month of December, we need to find a few that we make. We need to find a few more because this won't work with 11 or 12.
So what's your take on my theory that our need to read into decision-making sometimes leads us to faulty conclusions? And believe me, I'm pointing fingers at myself here because I know I do it. But like, there's the tendency to look at the fact that he picked Martinelli here and it's whatever it is, 7 games where Pepe's played 5 minutes. He hasn't really played since the Palace game. To say, gosh, this is a spot where you would have expected he'd pick Pepe. Instead, he went with Martinelli. Pepe's done. But again, if he had picked Pepe, we'd all be saying he really does hate Martinelli. That kid's never going to play. So he's damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. But I'm going to ask you anyway, do you take anything from it? You were pretty critical of Pepe and his sort of work and commitment in the Palace game. And to be fair to you, we haven't seen much of him since then. So is there a there, or is there no there?
Yeah, so Nuno, a couple of bad passes versus Liverpool, and people writing him off. I wasn't bothered at all because of how he played. You could see he cares massively. He wants to do well, his energy, and he just wants to do so well. When Pepe didn't play well against Palace, I'm telling you, I saw things where he wasn't even looking at the play as we were building up. And there are bad performances, and there are bad performances where you're just not engaged, you're not connected to the team. And I was really worried because I haven't seen that before. And so I don't go to every live game. Some people say I've seen it before, Clive, blah, blah, blah. But I haven't seen that before. And I thought he's going to suffer for that. And he has done. He's dropped away. So he now has to convince the manager that I'm back. I'm playing with the values and the principles by which you want to play. And Martinelli's obviously showed that. Eddie Nketiah shows that, obviously, because he gets minutes ahead of Balogun because he's showing the right things in training, the right attitude, etc. And so when there's a chance to get him to play, he plays. And so there's a method to his madness almost, where he holds a really high standard about how you behave and how you apply yourself, even when you're not playing. And when you are playing, you best be engaged in the game. And if you're not, you won't play. And so Pepe, it's up to him, right? I sometimes think we put so much onus on the manager. But if you're watching carefully, the onus is on the players. You got to do it. If you don't do it, you don't play. It's a much better discussion to have this year with our 6 new signings than it was last year, where we were thinking, well, he hasn't played well, but he's playing next week because the player behind him is so bad. So we're developing a bit more depth, and people are coming on board a little bit more. A great example of that has been Maitland-Niles, who deserves to play. He's not playing, but when he gets a chance, I think he'll play well. And so it's up to Pepe to take a lesson from Maitland-Niles and say, you know what, I've been sat down. When I get on, I better be man of the match. And if I don't, I won't play again. And this is exactly what you want in a good side. When we played Everton on that Monday night, we're going to need somebody to step up. It won't be the same 11 that we played versus Man United, right? So Pepe's moment is coming, and he better be ready to take it. Otherwise, it's going to be a problem for him, not for us, for him.
Yeah, I mean, there's some people that are like, oh, this means he's going to be sold in January. I don't know. That seems crazy to me. And I mean, he's going off to the AFCON. I think there is something to be said about, hey, I better get a look at Martinelli in this low pressure game since he's going to be coming into a period where I need him more and Pepe's going to be gone. So there's always different ways you can interpret this. I
just interpret it that Martinelli deserved a chance ahead of him. That's what I'm thinking, mate. He's showing more in the stuff we don't see than Pepe is. And so he played him.
Yeah, and it worked out great. And what a goal, and what a moment, and what a player. And I think Tim hit on it exactly right, which is the speed with which we will say someone is going to be absolutely the next superstar and then forget about them and say that they are not even good is just crazy with these young players. And that I don't have a problem with people assessing young players and having an opinion on them, but the speed with which we adjust that and update that opinion based on single performances is a little bit alarming. I mean, in general, I think all of the way we react to football is in such a short news cycle now. And look, that's just the world we live in. I don't think it's anyone's fault. It just, it is. The speed at which our society is moving.
Did you see the Graham Potter stuff?
Yeah.
I mean, that tells you everything, doesn't it? Brighton sitting there, 4 points, whatever. they're a good side. They give us a slap, didn't they? They're a good side. They got a club that's moving forward, and they got a lovely training ground, lovely new ground. They got a progressive young manager. They got wonderful XG numbers last year, and then it's like, okay, that's not enough. We're going to boo you. You draw at home. I mean, this needs to. Well, I can't. You can't tell people how to feel, but
I get it.
That don't feel right to me.
There's an immediacy to things now that I think sometimes obscures the ability to analyze things more comprehensively. So, a lesson for all of us. Before we go, I mean, I guess there's two more things we should touch on quickly. I just really quickly want to talk Tomiyasu because we haven't much. I think it's a better game. I think it's an interesting Tomiyasu game because I think we saw a really good pass for the goal that he deserves credit for. Some really interesting involvement in the attacking third, and maybe some limitations to his attacking third play, versus what we saw on the other side, maybe with Tavares, although very different players. But we're seeing Tomiyasu being given a license to be more up the pitch. And so I'm curious what you think about that evolving role and what he's able to contribute in that area, because we think of him, or I think of him, as more of a defensive fullback, but he's definitely being given license now.
Yeah, I've got a Twitter thread in my head. I'm going to do it. A bit of it now. Just while you
wait till the pod's over.
Yeah, and it's really about comparing players and what they look like and what they offer. And I've always looked at Tomiyasu and thought he's a bit like Benjamin Pavard. He's a tall, right-sided who can play in a three, can play as a centre back, but doesn't really want to because he's quite leggy and can move. He moves the ball quickly, protects the right side of the pitch and stabilises the team, but can get forward when he needs to with quality. On the other side, we've got our Alphonso Davies in Tavares, right? So they pair off each other perfectly because one is just crazy aggressive, crazy forward thinking. Tilly's the same. And so when we were buying Tomiyasu, we did our bits, did we, on him? And I've always wanted a centre back, right back, as you know. and so I would have liked, without knowing Tomiyasu, the player that I had my eye on was Ben Godfrey at Everton, who I think would be a really good centre-back, right-back, and Everton use him in the middle of the pitch at the moment, and he's getting spun around, his career's going downhill. But when he was right-back, I think he's very quick, I think he fixes on people. So I like this type of player, Tomiyasu. I really like the players that secure us in that right side. And as soon as you see Ben White, you think he needs that type of right-back, without a doubt. He doesn't need a right-back that's a million miles up the road. And people thought, because Ben White played with Tariq Lamptey, that's what he needed. I never thought that. I thought in the back four, for him to be a back four defender, which, by the way, people weren't sure about when he arrived, he needed a stabiliser, and that's what Tomiyasu is. What surprised me a little bit is the certainty of his distribution. 1 or 2 touches, that's it. He recognises the ball shouldn't stay with him too long, and he's always got a picture. He has always got one, but he's got the ability to get out of whatever situation he's in. So if he's forced into his left foot, no problem. If he's forced to go out on the outside, no problem. I can play it inside my left foot, inside my right foot, or I can take you on the outside. And he's not slick smooth, but he's decisive and quick. And that certainty allows build-up, right? So it allows the players around him to know exactly what he's going to do. So you best be moving. If the ball's travelling to him, you best be moving because you're getting it. So that's the automatic movements that you really need to see. So I really rate him. I think he's been a major, major addition to our team. I've never felt stable, until he's come along. He's added the stability. So you're looking at loose ball defensive players. Him and Gabriel and Partey are those. They're the ones that win the races. You got your playmaker there, sitting there, all these bodies smashing people all around him. Ben White saying, okay, I'll tell you what, I'll take it out. Look at my shorts, nice and clean. There you go. And you lot can have all the broken bodies around you. I'll get this team going. It's a lovely balance we've got going on there, I must admit.
Yeah, and a lot more to come. Bits and pieces. Do you think Martinelli should have been given a penalty? I mean, for the shoulder to face?
Yeah, I did listen to, I went for my dog walk today and I listened to Andrew nearly get upset about that, for Andrew, that is. He was really upset by his standards, yeah. And I think he raises a good point about the blow to the head. I think that's the thing there. We want shoulder-to-shoulder contact, but it was the aggression to the head. that I didn't really like. And when you look at that a second time, you think, well, that doesn't look right.
Well, he said something that, the best people, Clive, make you think about something totally differently. And Andrew made me think of it differently, because when I watched it the first time, I thought the defender tried to go shoulder to shoulder, but the guy he was going with is just shorter. So the shoulder caught him in the face instead of the shoulder. But Andrew made a point that really made me think, which is, if I go for the ball with my foot, don't get the ball and get your ankle, it's a penalty. If I go for your shoulder and don't get your shoulder and get your head, it's a penalty. So I think in that respect, he's spot on. Maybe the defender's trying to go shoulder to shoulder, but it isn't shoulder to jaw.
The defender knows that Martinelli's sharp, right? It's going to do him. So I'm going across to smash him. But I'm going to go across with my shoulder to smash him. But really, I'm trying to leave one on him. That's what I'm trying to do. And Andrew being a centre-back knows exactly what I'm talking about, right? I'm going to leave one on him, right? But I'm going to put my shoulder there, because I can then say shoulder 50-50. But really, what I'm trying to do is use excessive force. And that's what the referee's got to decide. Was there excessive force there? And I think there was. And once you hit someone's head like that, I think you got to do something. I mean, it didn't cost us anything in the game, but that's one for a referee review discussion. What would you do in this situation? And I think it's excessive force to their head. And for me, that's a penalty.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm happy to have that given as a penalty. So we'll go back and make that 3-0. So, all right, last thing. We're going to do a lot of hashtag content this week, so we don't need to go into it in full. But with the trip to Old Trafford, I mean, this feels like, this to me is as big a fixture as we're going to have this season. Because if we can somehow win this game, and I'm not saying that saying is a foregone conclusion, we have not gone to Old Trafford and won much, but we've done it, and done it recently, and they don't quite have their new man in yet. If we do it, I think we go 8 points clear of them, and they only get to play us once more at the Emirates. And so you put yourself in a position where one of the teams you think could be fourth is in a really big hole to try to come back and finish above you. It is an opportunity. Now, I'd take a draw, of course, but a win here, I think, suddenly tilts the way I look at the top four race to making us potentially even a favorite for it. And I realize the AFCON is going to change the landscape completely, but I don't know what Saka's availability will be. There's some big decisions to be made. I mean, is he going to bring Tierney back in for his first start in ages for us in that spot? Is he going to try to bring Lacazette back in after Odegaard got the fun game against Newcastle? So again, we'll do a deeper dive, several deeper dives this week, but do you have an early inkling as to what he should do in the stakes of this game?
Yeah, I've got a little inkling for. I look at these next two games. Actually, we got Man United and Everton, two away games up north within a week. Mate, if we can get 4 points in those games, that'd be great. If we can get 6, we're on.
I mean, look, if you get, but like the funny thing is, if you said we could only get 4, I would take the 3 at Old Trafford. That's the one that, to me, because Everton are not finishing anywhere good this season. They're dead. Yeah,
well, you got to look at it and say to yourself, Man United still got a half decent. I say that without looking at half decent home record, and they're still Man United, right? So when other teams go there, they're not going to get too many points there, right? So whereas at the moment Everton are all over the place, other teams will take 3 points there. So we need to take 3 points. That's how you look at it, right? So I would still, be fine with the point at Manchester United, but if we were to get 6 from 6 the next 2 games, again, this is a step forward. I thought the Watford game was big for me because it was a sort of game where we were expected to win and we just snuck it and we won that game. That's the sort of game we used to drop points in. That's a big game. That gave us a little bit of breathing space for Liverpool. And then we doubled down against Newcastle and made sure that Liverpool didn't cost us anything but 3 points. Right? So now we've got 2 away games. And when we've done this in the past, I remember years ago we went to Man City and Everton, lost them both. The season crushed after that because we were run off the pitch in both games. And I remember it and I think this is something that Arsenal need to do better. 2 games away. We've got to get points from them. We can't just give these games up. I do think we need to, from a playing point of view, I think we need 11 players there. I know it sounds stupid, but we can't carry anybody. No passengers in these games. They're going to be quite high energy. Manchester United are going to fancy themselves. They've got a new manager. They're going to be pressing. Well, we're not bad at the back, so I don't mind who we play there. So I'm not worried about that. But when we get it into that phase we're talking about, that phase 2, we got to keep it. We got to keep it and then shake their fragile confidence. And so I think Lacazette plays in this game. I think Aubameyang may play in this game. You know, he may play from the left. I think Lacazette definitely plays in this game. We've got to keep that ball in that area and then really test them. And so, yeah, and Everton, you know, I watched them at the weekend. They're not great. Rafa's really under it. I think they've got Merseyside derby coming up.
That's not a coach they need an excuse to lose patience with.
Well, I hope we're not playing 2 new managers in a row, right?
Three new managers in a row?
Yeah, sorry, yeah, you're right. So this could be a problem, right? But in the end, the players on the pitch, not the managers, but it could be a problem. Manchester United have finally done something correct. They're putting some structures in place with people that know football and not people like Darren Fletcher, who's a good centre mid, is your technical director. I mean, what the hell's that about? Right,
what is he doing on the touchline during the match? What is going on there?
You know, people question Eddie's experience, but at least he's done the job before. Yeah. You know, he's in a national team, for God's sake, and not any old national team.
Yeah,
you know,
the national team.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, what's that? Ricky beautifully highlighted it yesterday. Jobs for the boys, right? Jobs for the boys, and that can't continue. So, Man United will sort themselves out, and we'll all be in trouble in a few years' time when they do. But until then, we got a chance to take them. And Michael Carrick fancies himself as a coach. They're going to be quite energetic. We got to match that energy, keep the ball when we turn it over, get our 3 passes, get into attacking shape, and take them. They're not that great. They've still got Eric Bailly and Lindelof, mate, and there's a goal there waiting for us. They've still got Wan-Bissaka, who's great on one-on-ones on the outside, but anything across his face of him, he's useless. And Alex Telles, well, he's not the answer for me. So there's still vulnerabilities there at the back. We just need to get there. And when we do, I think we'll be absolutely fine.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll take the nice, smooth 10-0 victory, as you know. Let's leave it there. Lots and lots and lots of stuff to come this week, and there will be more about that wherever you are, whatever you're doing. I hope you're doing great. It's it's getting into that busy time of the year, though, and the games will be coming thick and fast, as we always say. Clive's on Twitter, ClivePFC. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
My name's Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. We will definitely try to keep you updated over on the Twitters and all over the place on what's coming this week, so keep an eye out there, and more on the possible watch party and definitely a live stream before United. So, as I said, lots to come. We love you. We'll talk to you after Arsenal 10, United 0.